Hello and welcome to Get Celebritized. I'm your host, Aurea McGarry, and today I am bringing on a wonderful guest, another TEDx speaker from San Diego. They're having a big event there on June 11th in 2023. So if you're watching this after that, you're going to have to see them on the YouTube. But if you're watching before that, get a ticket because it's going to be a phenomenal event. And yes, I believe you can watch it online. So today I'm bringing on one of their key speakers, and she is absolutely amazing. Her name is Madhushree, hopefully I got that right, Ghosh. And she's the daughter of refugees and an immigrant who has debuted her food narrative, KHABAAR, an Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory, and Family. She's very, very interesting. You're going to love listening to her story. She was Miss Magazine's most anticipated read in 2022. Her work has been Pushcart-nominated Best American Essay, Notable Mention, and published in the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Longreads, LARB, and many others. Work in oncology diagnostics. She's focused on gender pay parity in science and food and stories of immigrants. Oh my gosh, let me bring her to the stage. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope I said your name right. I was crossing my fingers. Madhushree, right?
You did very good. Thank you so much, Aurea.
And you do my name perfectly. Thank you so much. I am so glad you're here. I cannot wait to hear more about your story because I'm reading your bio and I'm reading everything about you on the TEDx San Diego website, which I just put up for everyone to see because it's such an honor to be on the TEDx stage. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you got selected for TEDx because many of my viewers, have that dream and that goal someday to walk on that red dot. And I loved it. It really was such a moment in my life as well. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the reasons why you are here with us today with your passions and your platform that you have.
First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's just fantastic what you do for so many of us. So thank you, Aurea. What do I do? What am I?
Who are you?
Who am I? That's an existential question, but
we've got time. Let's go.
But you said it. I'm the daughter of refugees, and I'm an immigrant to America. And what that means is you have multidimensional facets to yourself. When we try to pigeonhole somebody into you live in, I don't know, New York, or you live in San Diego, and therefore that's what you are, or that you have an accent that has tinges of British English and American English like mine, then you pigeonhole me into another place. What I'm trying to do is talk about immigrants and refugees to our country, to America, and how multifaceted we are. By that, I mean, you may be a mother, you may be a daughter, you may be a scientist, you may be a writer, you may be a farmer, you may be a chef, and you could be all of them. And so I work in cancer diagnostics. I write about food, but I write about food, using food as a social justice tool. And I actively talk about how you can build community by continuing to look at the immigrants and refugees in your town, in your city, who bring to you produce, farm goods, or even your daily coffee. And what you do when you do interact with someone who may not be from your community. America.
You bring up so much. There's a lot to unpack right there, but I really want to ask you a couple of questions that I've already just thought of. As you say, we come to the country, wherever we are, as immigrants or refugees. Now, we know in America, we're all from somewhere else. So we're all, I guess, technically immigrants from one of our generations came over here. So tell me a little bit about the difference between the immigrant and the refugee and how those ecosystems work, and talk to us about that. And then I want to talk to you more about this social justice about food. I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm going to dive into that a little bit too.
Absolutely. So we're talking about what we talk about when we talk about food. So what is the difference between immigrants and refugees? In San Diego, actually in California, we have the largest number of of people who've been resettled in our communities. And within the San Diego community, we have the most number of people who've resettled. After that comes LA and Sacramento County, and this is based on Cal State Matters 2017 report, Department of Homeland Security.
More than Texas and New York and
Absolutely.
Miami?
Wow. Yeah, and there's a reason why. Because during the Vietnam War, in Camp Pendleton, which is a few miles away from my house, right around that area, we settled a lot of Vietnamese refugees who basically made that place amenable for people who were looking for food, safety, and shelter. So you're looking at people who are leaving another place, another country that they call home, to come to another place for food, safety, and shelter. So, when we talk about children, young mothers moving out of a certain region, taking their children away to another place, what are we trying to say? What that means is the situation back where they come from was so bad that they would rather risk life and limb in order to come to a place where they could get safety. That is the refugee crisis. My parents were babies when India got divided into India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan in 1947, when the colonizing power Britain left India. And so they took buses, trams, trains, and walked from what's now Bangladesh into India. And they were babies at that time. I consider my homeland India, but I also consider my homeland America. My parents would still talk about, they're long gone now, but they would still talk about Bangladesh as their land. So what is it that connects us when we are refugees? Because we've come back to a land that gives us safety, but we continue to think of another land that used to be home, and we continue to think of the good things that happened in that place, and we try to recreate that in our adopted land. So that, to me, is the difference between immigrants and refugees. Now, immigrants, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country as a graduate student. I came here for my PhD in biochemistry, then a postdoc in molecular biology. I went to Hopkins. I went to, the best schools on earth.
Wow.
I was very privileged. I have to say, I was very privileged. I had an interview with the US immigration folks. They let me in. I got a scholarship. So if you really look at it, the world opened for me when I came here as an immigrant. So I become a US citizen with gratitude, with pride, with joy. But I also continue to highlight India because that's where my formative years were.
Wow, that was such a great explanation. I love that you brought all that together and so well. And you're in now, you come over and you're working in oncology, you're working in science. You talk about science in America. What is science in America? I mean, you come from somewhere else, you're very brilliant in the biology. Here I am as a cancer, I always say survivor because I made it through, but now I'm thriving. And I'm always so curious about, the cures and all the money that's spent on finding a cures, and thinking there's got to be a better way than chemo. There has to be a better solution than radiation. So what does it mean for you when you say you're in oncology, science in America? Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing in that industry, because it's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'll get on my patient advocacy soapbox now.
Oh, yeah,
So,
do.
so here is where it's at. I get at least 2 to 3 calls every day from friends of friends, friends of friends of friends saying, I got this diagnosis. What am I going to do now? Or what does this mean? The doctor says this, and therefore I should do that. And you'd have smart, intelligent people completely stuck. It's almost like it's analysis paralysis, because what they are trying to do is understand what would be the best solution for them. When you're in cancer diagnostics, what you're trying to do is give a solution that leads to the best possible patient care and medical intervention. It has to be quick, it has to be effective, and it has to lead to the patient getting into remission. We are not at that stage yet. What you have are 2 parts. One is chemotherapy. You just talked about chemotherapy. And then you talked about the fact that chemotherapy is really harsh. What we also have is targeted therapy. But targeted therapy is you're looking at drugs that can target the exact site or the mutation or the genetic marker that will then stop the cancer from spreading. And then you have something that we call immunotherapy. And immunotherapy is primarily targeting your immune system. So there are many different ways you can target cancer, but the way I look at it is how would you as a patient feel if you're treated as a number and a medical record rather than personalized? So we need to have that personalized care because, and I'm going to come up with a little bit of a statement. I don't think we should lump all cancers in the same way. By that, I mean, when you have prostate cancer or breast cancer, if detected early, now we know that people get into remission. People actually are cancer-free after a while if the detection takes place much earlier, or if you have the mutation that excuse me, that you can take care of.
Right.
But if you have pancreatic cancer, that's not the case because the diagnosis of that, or even the ramifications of that, are much higher than the. Excuse me, I gotta drink some water. It's not as simple. So that's why. Excuse me.
You okay? That's all right. Take a breath. You're all right. That's all right. You're fine. And I have a story I tell you when you talk about the numbers. When I was diagnosed, I went to the big Moffitt Center in Tampa, and I remember having this diagnosis, and they lost my chart. They left me in the office after taking that spinal tap, which was so painful, and they left me there for like an hour, and I'm like, the pain is going to start kicking in. I'm scared. My husband had to go out into the hall, couldn't find the person left there, and then they lost my chart. I felt so disregarded. Here I am, knowing that I have cancer, didn't know what type yet, had not had the surgery yet, scared, wondering, oh my gosh, I hated the whole process of feeling like a number, forgotten, a file, and it was horrifying. From there, though, I said, there's got to be a better way. And I got referred to a wonderful oncologist who saw me right after that, like the next couple of days later. And he sat me in the office. He talked to me for at least 2 hours, telling me how curable. I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was telling me how curable this was and how this was going to happen. Chemo, we're going to give you this. It might be hard, but if we stick at it, you'll be fine. And just made me feel so loved. And I'm still friends to this day, 23 years later, because of the TLC and the client relationship I had with him. Absolutely amazing. Difference night and day. Same treatment. I would have gotten the same treatment. And the Moffitt Center is great, but it just wasn't for me. It's a educational hospital. God bless it. Does wonderful things. But for me, in that particular experience, to be lumped in all of that, to get lost in the shuffle, when I was able to go to this other doctor that really, it was a much smaller experience and much more intimate, much more boutique experience, really mattered. Chemo was the same, but I probably would have died because it was so harsh on me and I was so sick and they had to hospitalize me. And he cut through all the red tape to make sure I was hospitalized after every chemo because I would lose 10 pounds overnight, just throw up 18 times a day, 10 days straight. There was like no stopping my violent reaction to chemo.
Wow.
Cancer was curable. The chemo almost killed me. So that TLC was so important to me because I'm afraid I would have gotten so lost in the shuffle, saying, "Oh, you're fine, just grin and bear it." If I was just a number.
No, but that's what I mean. So what you're saying is that we need to have a personalized care. We need to understand cancer as a personalized medicine requirement.
Swallowed wrong. I hate when that happens. That's happened to me on shows. No, you're fine. But yeah, take a breath. You're fine. You're good. We got time. But I always said, it's okay. It's got to be a better way than chemo. And then you're fine. I'll keep talking. And then I was glad I didn't have to have radiation because I'll do this. I didn't have to have radiation because they took out half of both my lungs, and they said radiation long term could affect my lungs. They didn't want to take the chance. So I didn't have the radiation. My brother had cancer and he did have to have radiation. So it's just, you just never know. It's kind of like this Russian roulette, kind of like it was back with COVID. Some people reacted, some people didn't, some people lived, some people didn't. You kind of just don't know how people are going to react to this. So have you cured cancer yet? That's my question. All of them, just all of them.
So that's why I say every cancer is different.
Yeah.
Every cancer is different, and therefore every cancer needs personalized treatment.
Oh, definitely. I know there's all different types of chemo and everything. So, well, with that, um, I know you're going on the TEDx stage, and that is such a privilege. And I was looking in your bio, and I was looking on your website. Let me put your website up because you're very. I can see you're an author. You have several books up there, and you have your book KHABAAR: An Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory, and Family. So, how does the food fit into this journey, into your story? So, I see a lot about food, social justice, your journey of food, memory, and family, talking about how food is impacting your life and how you see it impacting other people's lives.
So when you're looking at drugs per se, you have pills, you have cocaine, heroin, or whatever else it is. Food
Well, I
is a
asked you about food. Now we're on to cocaine and heroin. Wait a minute. What question did I ask?
right. So, but food is a drug that you need. You cannot live without food.
Right.
So that's point number one. Hold that thought. The second point is, if you don't know me and I don't know you, and I place a plate of food between us, you either like the food, you hate the food, you know the food, you don't know the food, you think it's disgusting, you think it's foreign, or you think it's amazing and you want to try it. Food in itself will then lead to a conversation, right? So Anthony Bourdain has talked about it, that every time that we put a plate of food in front of people, you have a conversation. And that conversation does not mean I agree with you, you agree with me, but it is where I'm exchanging ideas with you. So when we talk about food from the perspective of immigrants and refugees, we're talking about food that may not be part of this current world, but it's something that you may be interested in. And then you can find out more about their culture through this, or you can talk about food from the perspective of social justice. So when you talk about food from the perspective of social justice, deprivation of food is also discussing food. When we actively deprive ourselves of food, the diet culture, that's also a discussion of food. If you're talking about food from a particular part of the world that is, in our opinion, stinky, not pretty to look at, we are actually commenting on their ways of life. Because what is stinky to you, what is unattractive to you, maybe a daily course of food that they have been eating. And it's not just talking about food in that sense. We're also talking about food. For example, in my culture, we eat food with our hands. And by that, it means, and a lot of South Asian cultures, we do that.
Yeah.
And I personally feel it's because the cook actually used their hands to cut the vegetables, cook the vegetables, and then they're giving it to you. So there's a direct connection between the cook and the receiver who's eating it with their hands. So there's a direct connection through your fingers into your mouth. So you're actually absorbing the energy of the person who's cooked that
Oh,
food.
I've never heard that. That's neat.
That's my theory.
Very
But
personal. Makes it much more personal. Friendship,
yeah,
breaking the bread. I like that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think, and people ask me why I talk about food when I'm really a science person. Well, I'm also a Bengali, so I come from the state of West Bengal in India. Um, it's very scientific what we eat. Whatever we eat is very scientific. You think of Indian food and you're like, oh, well, there's a 9.99 buffet down the road in this little shopping complex, right? But that's buffet system where you pretty much,
You don't want people
pouring
putting
food.
things in with their hands there.
Yeah, you're basically putting food on top of each other, though. You have the saag, you have the butter chicken, you have the chicken tikka masala, you have everything all meshed. But our food, we actually eat in courses. So you'll start with greens, which is fiber, and that kind of prepares your stomach to receive heavier protein food. So then you take dal or lentils, which is higher protein, but it's vegetarian, so it's not as high as meats. After that, you eat some greens again to continue to make your stomach uh, uh, pliable, ready to get the higher content of protein. And then you eat fish or chicken and that's your protein that you're getting. And then
Interesting.
you end that with dessert or sugar. So you just stop right there, and that's your meal. So it's one by one by one by
They're
one. You
layered.
don't put everything together. So a salad is all encompassing, but it's not. It does not add in meat after greens. It does not do it in the scientific manner that the body's
Interesting.
willing to receive. So do we eat like that? No, we don't. We don't eat that like that anymore. And either way, is $9.99 for a buffet is
Or a
so
salad.
attractive.
Everything's in a bowl. You mix it up and
Yes,
you eat it all at once.
exactly. So
Or
a meal is supposed to be where you have no distractions. You're not sitting in front of the TV. You're not watching your screen. But we
well,
don't
now
do
you have to
that. And
leave
we haven't done
America.
that.
That's
Yeah,
America
we haven't
way.
done we haven't done that in generations, so why would we start now? So,
I know.
so that's the unfortunate part about food that we don't talk about is
Mhm.
food is a conversation, food is a negotiation tool, it is a strategizing tool, it is a tool to pull communities in, tool to highlight people who have not had the opportunity to be highlighted.
And we really have lost the dinner table. I deal with a lot of, I do coaching and I deal with a lot of women in business and networking. And the conversation is always intermittently, just these last 10 years or so, that getting back to the family dinner table, it's just like almost non existent now. I'm sure some people do it, but for the most part, people running and coming and going in different schedules. And even if you do sit there, everybody on their phones. I mean, it's hard to rally everybody together and then get them to put the phones down. I know people that put phones in baskets and this is dinner time. So good for those that can do that. That's great, because now the more you're talking to me, it is much more of a social moment. Is a time to digest. And so many just don't do that. We've gotten so far away from that. And are you talking on the TEDx stage about this? Are you going to give us some solution or ways to get back
Well,
to the socialization of food? I mean, socialization, but I mean the society of food being part of the conversation and time with friends and time to digest. Tell me a little
I
bit
wish,
about TEDx speak.
no, that would be my next TEDx talk.
You
I'm
should.
talking.
How to get
So
back to the dinner table.
so the topic is what we talk about when we talk about food, and I've talked about it for many, many, many years. And I really wanted to highlight through food the immigrants and refugees in San Diego County
Oh, okay.
who are growing our food. So these are the guys who are growing our food. We have our community farm called New Roots Community Garden, and it's been there for 20 years, over 20 years, and um, it's a community farm that is run by immigrants and refugees, and they grow the produce that they sell in farmers markets that we then buy. So all I'm asking people to do is start thinking about what we talk about when we talk about food. Are we talking about I am buying this from the local supermarket, or am I buying it from the local farmers market, but I know the farmer and I know the farmer's story? I grew up in a small little neighborhood called Chittaranjan Park in New Delhi, where we knew where the fish came from, we knew where the chicken came from, we knew who our
Came from the grocery
vegetables.
store.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But if a kid now comes back and says that chicken is found in supermarkets, he or she will not be wrong.
Right.
He will not be wrong, because that is exactly the truth. So
Okay.
that's where it's
So,
at.
what impact do you want to make with your TED? We don't want to know the whole thing because they're going to have to go and watch to find out your whole presentation. Because I know TEDx is all about spreading ideas. It is such a great stage with people from all over the world, like yourself and myself and others, that bring these amazing new ideas, these new ways of thinking about something that may be old, but you have a new twist to it, a new thought. So, what
Yeah.
impact do you want to make by being on the world stage of TEDx?
The impact that I want to make it does not have to do with me. It has to do with the audience and the listeners. It is for us to start thinking a bit more about the world we live in and the community that we are trying to be part of, and acknowledge our differences while knowing that these differences, especially with immigrants and refugees, actually enhances our society.
Yeah.
And so, can we, after this talk, take a step back and say, do I know where my food comes from? Do I know the farmer who gave me this head of lettuce? do I know that? And chances are we don't. Chances are we don't. But could we find out more about them, especially if they are a farmer who's been growing this for generations on their farm? Or are we looking at organic, sustainable foods that New Roots Community Garden in San Diego is? And can
Right.
we go support groups like them? San Diego has hundreds of urban farmers. And this little group that I'm talking about has been doing this. They're just a feisty bunch of gardeners who've been doing this forever, and
Yeah.
they've got their children through college
I love
growing
that.
food for us. So I think we need to celebrate these successes which you don't see, because during the pandemic, while you and I were sheltering uh, in space in our homes, these people were working. They were in the fields, just like essential workers were in the
Yeah.
fields. So it's about time that we started acknowledging where our food came from.
So many reasons why to support the local growers, get to know them. I mean, I'm all on board. So I have another question. I know I live in the suburbs of Atlanta. I'm from New York City originally, and now I'm in the suburbs of Atlanta. You just reminded me there is a wonderful sign that I pass almost every day that says fresh lettuce, fresh farm. It's only open certain hours, so I never get there because every time I think about it, up it's closed. But I know it's there. Now I'm going to recommit myself to go in there because I know they have wonderful lettuce. Everybody raves about their vegetables. So if somebody lives in a big city, like say they don't live in the suburbs of Atlanta, but they live in the city or in Chicago or in New York, how do you find your local growers? And what if it's not easy to get to? Because I know it's a convenience to buy things like that. And maybe they want to go over for the weekend on a Saturday morning to the farmer's market. That's fine. But on a regular basis, how do you sustain that if you want to support local growers, but you're in a big city?
So I'll tell you what I did, because it's not a question of money. It's really not a question of money. And this comes from maybe my immigrant background or Indian background, because what I did during the pandemic, let me give you my story. What I
Yeah.
did during the pandemic, I just wanted to give, but I didn't know how to, and it wasn't about money. You're supporting restaurants, all that, but what else can you do? So I started seeking out urban farmers, and you can literally
Google
Google
search that.
urban
Yeah.
farmers
Okay.
and find out,
Urban farmers. Good.
right? So then we started what I would call a barter system, a goods
Exchange.
exchange program, which was
Mm.
very interesting because
What you
they'd be
got to
like,
do.
I'm sorry, Madhushree, um, we've had lettuce and that's all we've got, which is fine. But then you go into their farm, which might be a little plot of land, and you have trees on the side, uh, but they have banana leaves, and they're like, we don't know what to do with these banana leaves. I'm like, it's gold for me. So I take the banana leaves, I wrap fish with mustard sauce in it, I steam it, and I give it back to them. So I make food for them, and they give me greens that I can use for that. So
Wow.
so
That's so creative. That is
you
so creative.
but you don't have to really start thinking about it being a monetary exchange. If you can do something for them which they need, that would be very helpful. If all they want is an acknowledgement, then that's all you do is acknowledge. I
It's
just
also healthy too, because I know that so
Yeah,
many people want to get back. They want to grow their own. People are growing gardens in their house now since the pandemic, those,
exactly.
which is I've always wanted to do because I'll never be able to grow a garden outside. One, I have a brown thumb, but even if I could learn how, which I could learn, I've had apple trees and the deers get them and the bunnies get my food, and I would never stop them because I could never not let the bunnies and the deers and all the animals eat all my vegetables. So I would grow them for the animals and I wouldn't be able to eat them. But I know that eating fresh vegetables, especially locally grown, is really good for you. So, I think about the times when I was in New York City, we go down to the local grocer. I don't know where that food came from. It probably didn't come from a local grower, probably came from somewhere bigger, and they bring it to the local market. But I know for those who want to eat healthy, that if they can seek them out. So Google searching to find out if they can. Do you find people? I don't know if this is an oxymoron, but do people ship to the cities and it still be fresh? Can you support somebody local that may live in the country if you live in a big city like a Chicago area or New
I
York?
mean, yeah, because things do get shipped. We are pretty fortunate in California because of the climate here. I mean, it's just
Right.
things grow really well. But if you're looking at Chicago or New York, things that actually come to the cities are from Illinois or
Sure.
the Midwest
But
region.
local growers, I know we can get them from the big box. I know
Yeah,
we can go to the grocery store anytime we want. But
yeah.
to support, I mean, support just by because they taste better. Have you ever had, I know you've had the farmer market tomatoes are absolutely sweet and red and delicious. You get them from the grocery store and they're hard as a rock and then they're bad before you even have a time for them. It's like all or nothing. They're like
Yeah.
with
So
anything.
yeah.
I mean, the vegetables at the market at our grocery stores are just, they don't even make you want to eat them. But you go to the farmer's market, it's completely different taste. The
Well,
fruit is
farmers
delicious.
market foods are also seasonal, so you're not going to look at beets and carrots growing in the summertime. Farmers market food is seasonal, and that's how the human body has been conditioned, that you
Mm-hmm.
need to eat food that is good for you based on the season that is. If you're going to say, I love carrot salad, and therefore I will put carrots in my salad 365 days a year, you will get those, but they will be chemically modified. And if you're okay with that, then good for you.
Right. I don't think a lot of people know that. I remember when I was macrobiotic, yeah, the rule was to only eat things that grow within like a 5 mile radius of where you live or 10 mile radius. Like we should not be eating pineapples and tropical fruit if we live in New York because the tropical fruit actually keeps you cool. When in New York, you want to be kept warm and you want to eat the apples off the apple trees and all the things that grow up there. But it's so different this day and age because we can ship anything anywhere 365. So I think for the most part, we've gotten off the track of knowing even what's in season and when it's not in season.
Well, I think the unfortunate part about us has been the loss of ancestral knowledge,
Yeah.
especially for ancestral knowledge from different communities. So it's not just my community or your community, but in general, we've lost so much knowledge. I mean, I grew up with my father telling me, you know, how to select a mango versus how to select a good cut of meat,
Right.
which is that's not how kids are brought up these days. We talk about play dates. That's what we talk about, or not.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Exactly.
so we are losing that sense of our
Heritage.
connection to our roots, and,
Yes.
and what are roots. That also has to do with what you eat, right? Everything is connected to what you eat.
Yeah, and we really know that you're in the oncology industry. I'm a cancer survivor. Anybody that has any kind of, have been through a battle, whether it's cancer or some other ailment, I know friends who are diabetic and whatever the ailment may be that makes you have to be more conscious. It's always a good thing because it makes us more conscious from an experience that is seemingly bad, but it's actually good for us because otherwise we keep on going until your body breaks. Most of us take better care of our cars with the oil changes, the tune-ups, and all the good fuel you want to put in it than we do to our own bodies that we're sticking, just anything and all the preservatives. So this is a great topic for you, a great topic for everybody to listen into. So I'm excited about the San Diego TEDx. It's going to be phenomenal. You have some great
Thank
ideas.
you.
It's just the tip of the iceberg with you, though. I put up your website, and it says writemadhushree.com. Before you go, I want to know a little bit about what is this writemadhushree.com. You got a lot of books on there. You have one that is braided memoirs. Talk to me a little about what you're writing and what this message is for people.
Yeah, so thank you for asking that
Oh,
question, because I think it's important for people to understand different writing styles. If you're an author and you're thinking of writing your memoir, or this is just one of them, where if your hair is loose like mine, then there is no braid. But if you're braiding your hair, you have like three threads that you twist and turn. Now, what does that mean? One thread could be a thread of your childhood. One thread could be a thread of what's happening now. And throughout that thread, you have the third thread that is actually using a commonality between both the threads. So let's use an example: blueberries. So you can talk about blueberries. So I'll talk about blueberries. I did not grow up eating blueberries. That's not part of my culture. So I can talk about that from my childhood perspective, that I'd never seen this. I can talk about blueberries that is so common in this country that I was giving blueberries to my dog, who really loves it.
my dogs
Um,
do too. They love
yeah,
blueberries.
it's filled with antioxidants. It's good for them. Let
Yes,
them eat it.
they eat
But I'm
carrots
like,
and blueberries.
30 years of living in this country, and I consider blueberries, commonplace.
Right.
Whereas 20 years of my life growing up in India, I had no idea what blueberries was. So what am I doing? I'm talking about my childhood with no blueberries. I'm talking about my adulthood with blueberries, enough that I'm giving it to my dog. And the third thread is about blueberries, how it travels, or where it grows and why it grows where it does and why it's common in America. And so
Interesting.
that pulls together a childhood memory, a present day memory, and a thread of food in there. You can use different braids like that. You can use music, you can use film, you can use textiles, you can use rock stars, you can do whatever you want with a braided memoir. And I think I love writing it that way because that then talks about not only your life, but it talks about somebody else's life, or it talks about another concept that you're interested in without making it all about yourself. So mine is a food narrative memoir, meaning I use food as the narrative thread in this braid.
What's another example of a braided bag? I love it. It's such a different way to think. Boy, I love talking to TEDx speakers. I'll tell you what, because you have such a creative way of thinking about, like I said, everyday things in such a different way. You open up our eyes and our minds to such new conversations, and I love that. So when I saw that book, said braided memoirs, I was really curious. So now I see how that works with food. Tell me another example, because that's not food. That would be a braided memory.
An example of that would be if you're talking about music.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say you're talking about jazz, and you're talking about a jazz singer's life,
Okay.
and you closely follow that jazz singer's life because of a certain incident in that person's life, but you're talking about it through the music because you connected through that music to that person, right? So the memoir would be, I listened to this song and it reminded me of the time when my husband left me. And then you go back to this person. I'm just coming up with this story. This is a
Yeah, I
country
know. I
story.
love it. Go for it.
And then, or you could look at another braided memoir would be, you look at the Mona Lisa, right? And here you are thinking the Mona Lisa was going to be a huge, big painting, and then you find out it's a little teeny tiny painting. And then you get into the imaginary life of Mona Lisa, or you get into the life of the painter and try and draw parallels to it with you. So that's too is an art memoir, because you're now talking about how art influences your life using one painting that is the thread for your third braid.
That's fascinating. I love it. Do you teach on that? Is that what your books are
Yeah,
about?
I do teach. I have a class at Grub Street, which is a Boston workshop that's online that I teach quite a bit. But I teach here in San Diego. I like to teach with food, so I'll cook.
I can see
I
that.
will make the food. We'll all sit down and enjoy, because I feel like
I love it.
knowledge, you absorb knowledge better when you're eating. That's
You
what
know,
I think.
if I did all that, I'd be 300 pounds. But I see you cook good, healthy food, so it really wouldn't be. So
You'll be fine. You'll be
I
fine.
just, it's like you're sitting there eating cake. I'm really now resonating what you said about eating that your food in layers, eating that roughage first and layering. Because I just remember when I was macrobiotic many years ago when my mom had cancer, we were living in New York City. And that was the first thing that she tried to do to help heal her body was to
Yeah.
go macrobiotic. And I learned so much about food and seaweed and perfect proteins put together, the rice and the beans and the eating local. And it's just resonated throughout my life, how
Yeah.
important the foods are. Do I make a decision all the time? Absolutely not. But I know them. Does that count? But there's time I go in spurts where I can really, really be healthy, make great decisions. And then other times I don't. But there's that happy balance, a happy medium. And I think it's such a great reminder talking to you about how important that fuel is for our body. But more
Mhm.
importantly, how important it is for the social scene to, I might incorporate more eating with my events next. I do events as well. We've always had
Yeah.
luncheons pre-pandemic. Now since
Yeah.
pandemic, I'm not doing them in person, but I like that idea where maybe we can all order something, be online and be sharing food, even if we're online during our master classes.
Yeah, we so during the pandemic for 68 weeks, I had not hugged.
68 weeks. Who is counting?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
I
Okay.
counted because for 68 weeks I had not hugged a human. I was there with my
Wow.
dog, and that was it. So my bunch of friends, we are middle-aged ladies who were, so we would Zoom every Friday. Every Friday we would Zoom just to, check on each other, talk about politics, talk about whatever. And
Solve the world's problems. I get it.
how the world problem, because we were like, we don't know what else to do, so that's what we would do. And we would eat. And then I realized, I'm like, okay, but we're all in our sweatpants, we're almost in bed, because who cares, life is over, let's
Right.
let this and so I said, you know what, no, we're going to do a better job of this. So I started wearing saris. So we called it the Girl Gab sari time. So I would wear saris, dress up like I'm
Good.
going to a wedding, and my girls would be in their sweatpants. They didn't care. They would totally ignore me, but I would be, I would be in my finery, and I'd have my glass of wine, and we'd have a good time. But I think it does say something about community when, even if you are squares on a Zoom call, it's still community, because you do show up and you are trying to make yourself presentable, because this is a big deal. It is the Friday you're looking forward to, because you have no connection with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did keep everybody together. Thank God for Zoom, for sure, because it definitely was better than nothing. And now look at us. We're all still Zooming. It really does bring the world together, because in reality, you and I could have never met in person. I mean, maybe eventually, but this way we're able to meet people from all over the world whenever we want, a click of the button. But I love your addition. So I'm going to remember this from now on because of you, to share a plate of food, to share some food. Because I know people get together and they share a glass of wine, but this is more intimate, sharing the food, sharing the nourishment, and even talking about the food that you have on your plate and how you made it, and maybe bring in home recipes, or why, like mine would be the Greek chicken soup my Greek grandmother used to make. There's something about that, and my daughter's can make that beautifully. She doesn't even have a recipe. She just made it from the taste, and she reinvented it.
Oh, wow.
This tastes exactly like my great grandmother, and I've never been able to make it myself.
Well, you know what? I feel like there is a genetic connection, though. I mean, and I'm totally hippy dippy liberal, talking from God knows who. But I feel like there is a connection of grandmothers and how the recipes pass down to us, and even if we have never made it, it's almost like the taste buds know what to put in.
Maybe.
And so I
give me went right to my daughter.
But this is what it is when we talk about food. Is what are you talking? You're talking about traditions. You're talking about respecting your grandmother, honoring your grandmother, your heritage. Mm-hmm. You're talking about that through food. And isn't that such a wonderful place to be?
It really is. Everybody loves to talk about food. Food brings people together. That's why food is at the dinner table. We go to lunch. Let's do lunch. Let's do breakfast. We have a Breakfast of Champions table. I don't think any of us are eating breakfast, though, but it's a nice name, Breakfast of Champions. And then it's so important because we have parties with food. We have so much going on with food. If you go to a wedding, if you go to a funeral, whatever you do, there's food around us. But now I hope you'll be more aware of how food can bring people together. And one thing that you said in the beginning that I'm just going to round up with this, when you were talking about social justice with food, I thought of something. I don't know if this is part of your presentation, but you talked about the poor. Everybody needs food to live. And I thought about that food needs to be a right of being here, food and water. There shouldn't be anybody that doesn't have access to food. I mean, I know it can't all be a filet mignon or whatever, but food, sustainable food, not junk food, not a Pop-Tart, not, I remember when I had a bad bout and I was, a single mom and ends don't meet, and they give you like the worst of the worst food, like stuff it's not going to nourish you. It takes money to eat healthy. And I think that needs to be flipped around. What say you about giving people good, nutritious, healthy food? Should be cheaper than the box food of starch and chemicals. And here, have a box of white rice that's you got no nutrition, or a Pop-Tart. I mean, there's food and then there's nourishment.
And we have systematically, that is why I call it social justice, is because we have systematically deprived people of nourishment.
Yeah.
By filling people's stomachs does not mean you're filling their soul, nor are you nourishing them so they can contribute to society better. So once your body is used to sugar, that's what you're used to. Then you're pushing that group of people down the path of diabetes and heart disease and obesity, which is a direct correlation of what they're eating, because they've been doing it for generations on end.
Right.
When you're looking at the concept of how African Americans were brought here, it was they were kidnapped, brought here, and used to run farms and yet they had no access to the goods that they ran that
Wow.
they grew. So what did they do? They got the foods that were the scraps. They got the produce that were the scraps. So all the food that happens there um, is based on that, which means the nutritional value is not as good as the one that's fresh
Yeah.
produce. So, and I'm not just talking about, this is an American example. We do the same thing in India, where you have the Hindu caste system, where the people who are on the lower rung of this caste system are not able to access uh, fresh cuts of meat. So they will
Right.
make their dishes from the the parts of the meat that you throw away. And
Right.
is it nutritional value? Yes, but not as much. But what
Right.
we as humans did is we segregated, we discriminated against our own. That's what and we need to start acknowledging what we do, you and I. Like what are we doing when we don't talk about this, given that we all are extremely privileged? So
Yes.
what are we not doing? And so my mentor Danny Shapiro has always said this. What do you talk about when you talk about food? So in that vein, notice what you notice. So what are you noticing? I mean, are you noticing the little throw cushion behind me? Am I noticing your hair or your little necklace? Why am I noticing that? Right. So once you start noticing that, that tells a lot about you, that this is important to you is the reason why you're noticing it. So for us, we have to take a step back and say, you know what, I am privileged and I am also discriminatory. I have had behaviors that I'm not proud of. I acknowledge that and I want to do better. That's all we're asking for, that we all want to do better. We've done worse, we can do better.
I love it. You did such a great job today sharing with us this new ideas. I'm so excited about everything you're going to do. In a nutshell, as we wrap up in the last few minutes, tell us a little bit about how did you get the TEDx stage? Because I'm so glad you're on it. I'm so glad to meet you. So, just a few minutes, how did that come about in your life and how did you get on the TEDx stage?
So I've been a fan of TEDx and a fan of TED Talks in general. And all the speakers that I listen to on TED have been inspiring and also very relatable. So it's not that you're listening to them and say, "Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Bye." That's not how it was. It was always been, "Oh, I learned something. Maybe I should do this." And so it wasn't really a very straightforward, "Oh, I need to be a TEDx speaker." But it was more like I was working in the community already. I have this book that has created a lot of conversations in and around San Diego and America about food, but it's also brought in a lot of discussions about what South Asian writing is, immigrant writing is, and why immigrant stories matter. So I wanted to combine my writing life with what I do, which is not just science, but it's also food. So I started this conversation saying that we are three-dimensional people. And so I want people to understand that you can be an oncology diagnostics person, you can be a writer, but at the end of the day, you are part of this community. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And the TEDx San Diego auditions were coming up. They asked us to apply.
What
And
do you
so
mean
we
they asked us to apply? Was it they asked people at your job?
no,
What do you
it
mean?
was an open call in San Diego. So
Oh, so they just open call and you happen to see it. I got you.
yeah, I
Okay.
just happened to see it. I happened to be in town. I was like, all right, let's go. And
Good for
so I
you.
went for the talk. Um, Surprisingly, it was a rainy San Diego, which is rare. And so we were standing there, knocking on the door, trying to get in. We're like, is this a test? Is this a test that they're trying to get us all wet and straggly? But anyway, it was a wonderful experience, extremely motivating, but very sweet people. The TEDx organizing staff, all voluntary team members.
Yes, I love
And
TEDx people.
Audrey Jacobs is doing a fantastic job. Olivia Peachy is their amazing operations head, who's doing another spectacular job. And so we showed up. But the thing is, you end up connecting with your TEDx speakers, the lineup, and they are just so amazing. Teresa's talking about, safe parking. Jesse Leon is talking about sex trafficking, human trafficking, and this is all got to do with San Diego. There's so many things that are happening in San Diego that
yes.
I
love that they've made it local, because not all TEDx's are about a local community. A lot of them about worldwide issues. But I love yours. It's really local. You got all these local causes. You're really going to change your community. You're going to impact your community, but it's still going to influence the world, because when it goes in the World Wide Web and when it goes onto the YouTube, it's going to affect everybody that can make those changes in their own community.
Exactly.
So you can have that as a template. So
exactly. No, we are thrilled to bits, and thank you so much for your time.
I am thrilled to know you. I will be watching. Don't you worry. So I can't be there in person. I believe it's sold out. That's how popular you all are. It's sold out, but people can watch online, and that'll be me. I cannot wait. I'm so glad to know you. Thank you so much. Let me put your website up one more time, because we know the TEDx San Diego's up there, and then Madhushree.com. You've been a pleasure. Such an honor to meet you. I cannot wait for you to get on the stage. And thank you for all that you do in cancer and sustainable with your social justice with food, and opening up our eyes to more conversations around food. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aurea.
And until next time, this is Aurea on Get Celebritized, where we try to help you earn more so you can live more, so you can give more. And sometimes we just come and inspire you with fresh new ideas to hopefully impact your life, your community, and make your world a better place. And that's what we did today. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on Get Celebritized. Bye.